A very good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Nicole from the Singapore Centre for Character and Citizenship Education. So our centre is set up about a year ago, and we have with us today Professor Wiel Veugelers, who will be sharing with us on a topic that we are quite interested in. So please allow me to introduce him. So Professor Wiel Veugelers is an Emeritus Professor from the University of Humanistic Studies in Utrecht, which is in Netherlands. So Prof's research and teaching span several areas, including citizenship education, moral development, teacher pedagogical professionalism, school policy, education policy, as well as identity citizenship development. He is coordinating several international academic networks and his books has won international awards. The most recent is the book Moral and Political Dimensions of Critical Democratic Citizenship Education, and it is awarded the Outstanding Book Award by the SIG Moral Development and Citizenship Education of the American Education Research Association this year. Prof is also awarded the Humanistic Career Award of the Association for Moral Education. He has done a lot of work in this field, and today he will be sharing with us on learning and teaching in critical democratic citizenship education. So it's my pleasure to invite Prof to deliver his seminar for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, for introducing me. And also nice that you also came here this afternoon, either live or back home or back in the office. I will speak today about learning and teaching in critical democratic citizenship education. I will speak about different ideas. Also want to use different projects I have been involved in. Research project, implementation projects. And I'm educated as educational psychologist and developmental psychologist at the University of Amsterdam. And I started working there in 1979, and in 2002 I received a professorship in moral citizenship education at University of Humanistic Studies in Utrecht. And that's a small university linked with the humanist movement in the Netherlands. And the humanist movement is quite strong and has the same position as a religion. So we also, for example, we also train teachers to give a humanist ethical education. And students in school can choose for that. If they don't want to have religious education, they can choose for humanist ethical education. So it's very important that also people who don't have a religion, but are oriented to a more humanist worldview, are thinking about moral education and working in that field. So I really have been working with a lot of fun and with a lot of energy in this field. And I retired in 2019, but still do all kinds of things. So I'm associate editor of the journal Moral Education. I have a book series with Brill on moral and citizenship education. I'm in the advisory committee of the SCCCE study, the International Study of Citizenship Education. And till recently, I was supervising PhD projects. And still like to go on, but not so hard, but less work and also more enjoying. And I'm very happy to be here in Singapore. I've been here twice before. In 2014, Yasmina Sim invited me here to give a lecture in a symposium. And often I was here, twice I was here in Singapore on my way to Indonesia. Indonesia I've been more often than in Singapore. And because my wife, she is half Indonesian, half Dutch. She was born in Surabaya. And when she was 6, her family came to the Netherlands. So we really like to go to Indonesia to visit places where our family has been, and but also to look around. And I've been visiting professor at the University of the State University of Yogyakarta for several times. And recently published a book with my work in Bahasa, Indonesia. So I'll show you the cover later on. So, so I'm quite, you could say, quite involved and interested in this part of the world, Southeast Asia. Also now for the journal Moral Education, we are making a special issue on moral and citizenship education in East Asia. So I'm happy to be here and want to thank the Singapore Center for for Character and Citizenship Education and the NIE for inviting me. So I have an interesting time, and they made a nice program for me. So I'm very happy, very happy to be here and to have a lot of dialogues with the people of the center, other people of the ministry, like we had last Friday. And on Wednesday, I go to the academy to speak with leaders. So all kind of different activities together, and I enjoy it. And I'm happy people are real open to ideas, and I can see that they think a lot about it, and they're very friendly all, and they can see that they enjoy their work, and that's very important. So let's start with the slides. Oh yeah. This is the main building of my university in Utrecht, and was built with the money family earned with the VOC, the East Indian Company of the Netherlands, who were trading in this region of the world and earned a lot of money with buying species, other things. So that family built this house in the 17th century, but now the university is in it. You can also see a little bit the canal in front of our hall. Maybe you know, we have a lot of canals in the Netherlands. So today we'll have 6 elements. First, I will speak about changes in time, about concept and practices. Then more about learning and teaching, and about different pedagogical goals. Then go on with globalization. And then analysis of policy, theory, and practice. And then the last question, how to move on. What to do tomorrow. First, a definition of citizenship education. Education for citizenship is about acquiring the abilities and attitudes necessary to participate in political and civic life on the local, national, and global level. This is about participation, civic life, and political life, different levels. But it's also about relating to others, in particular people from different social, cultural, and ethnic backgrounds. So that's more the relational part of it. And in multicultural societies like the Netherlands, but in particular also, I think Singapore, it's very important that people learn to relate to others. The third element of a definition is more the direction it takes. The first two are participation and related. It's not so much direction. The third element is about concern for sustainability of humanity, the planet, and of democracy. And nations and also people can think different, in particular about the third aspect, how important they find democracy. I can even say that the first two elements the participation and the relating to others can also be part of an authoritarian regime. And the third one, that's more about democracy. I developed definition in the advisory board of the ICCS study. I said I start speaking about changes over time. There have been changes in the concept of citizenship. I call it deepening and broadening. And with deepening, I mean that originally the focus was only on the political level, about how to vote, about political participation, about political parties, so to a political level. But later on, in the past decades, it has been deepened. It's now also about the social and cultural level. How people should live together. What is important? What are important cultural elements? What is the cultural heritage? So it's more than only the political, it's also the social and cultural level. And recently, it has even been extended to nature, how we live together with nature. So the concept of citizenship has become very big. It's not only the deepening, but also the broadening of the concept. Originally, it was only linked to the national state concept of citizenship. But now it's also related to regional identities. The European Union is the best example of it. We also speak of European citizenship. But also here, the ASEAN, I hope I pronounce it well, is also a kind of regional identity. I don't think you are speaking here about Asian citizenship, but there is something that binds this part of the world together. The broadening has even extended to the global. That nowadays, within globalization, people are strongly connected. All parts of the world are connected. So the global citizenship education is also becoming important. Come back to global citizenship ideas later on. And in particular, the deepening the concept of citizenship results in a stronger link of moral education and citizenship education. There's a stronger link between that, between your political life and your own personal, social, and cultural life. It comes more together. So citizenship education has nowadays to do with identity development as well. I don't use the word character so much. I use more the word moral. There's some differences between it, but in general, it has the same direction. So the changes in concept of citizenship. There's another way about speaking of the changes over time. And that's more the kind of ideas who have been expressed over time. In the 60s of the last century, some of you were maybe there. And otherwise, you heard about it, or the boomers have been talking a lot about it. And particularly in the Western world, but also I think in Asia and in Latin America. The 60s was both about personal and social empowerment. Both. People should get the possibility to develop, flourish. But also, there should be social change. There's a strong movement in the 60s and the 70s in the Western world. Of the 70s. But that changed. For example, in education in the Netherlands, the government didn't want to have focusing on social empowerment anymore. Not too much project-based learning, not too much political projects. So they try to marginalize the social empowerment. And there was more emphasis on personal development, personal well-being. The 70s and 80s. The 90s, that became more instrumental area. Also in politics, that became the third way by Blair, Clinton, but also the Dutch Prime Minister Kok at that time. So less political debates, less debatable fights, but more a technological way of thinking about resolving problems, and not more as a result of a political clash. So education became more instrumental. It wasn't so common anymore to speak about moral values. Soft, we have done that before, but not anymore. It became quite instrumental and technological in the way people were speaking about education. But in the first decade of the 21st century, you could say there became a return of tradition, attention again for moral values, for character education, for moral education. In the Western world, but also I think in Asia. A return of tradition. And the idea was try to integrate it with the directions that had been before. And nowadays you can see there is in many countries, many nations all over the world, there is again attention for moral education, character education, and citizenship education. And they try to find new balances in that, new ideas, new balances. Particularly a balance between what I call autonomy development and social orientation, to connectedness to the group. In my talk, I will come back to that a lot. So over time, there were changes in the way people were thinking and speaking about education. The second part is more about learning. Here I present my view, because people have different ideas about learning. And I support a social-constructive view, articulated by people like Vygotsky, Brunner, particularly at the end of his career, and related more to moral education, Helen Hayes. So the social-constructive view is a personal process of giving meaning. Learning is always a personal process in which you give an own articulation of what you experience, of what you hear. You're all here in this room, and also people who are here online. You hear me talking, I'm telling you a lot, but you all make your own ideas about it. You remember some parts, you add some own ideas about it. So that's the personal meaning giving, you all do. But it's strictly not only a very personal process, and then I follow in particular Vygotsky, it's also a dialogical process. You're speaking in dialogues with people. So you react to my position. But also you react to other positions of people you hear, you know. So it's a very dialogical way of developing those ideas. Therefore, I speak of a social constructive view of learning. And I make it the division in 3 learning processes: reflective, dialogical, and democratic. Back to these 3 learning processes later on. When I speak about moral education, character education, or citizenship education, I think of a whole school approach. And that means that you can have special subjects for it. Yeah, I know here in Singapore, I learned that you have 1 hour each week student for character and citizenship education. It can be a special subject, but it can also be integrated in all subjects. History, biology, literature, social studies, all different subjects, gymnastics. Of all subjects, there can be an integration of moral values, citizenship topics. Very important in the whole school approach is the way of learning and teaching. It can be very direct, but can also more inquiry based. It can in different ways. School culture is important, part of the whole school approach. How students can live together, can work together, can work with the teachers. What's the formal organization? And of course, the linking of the school and society. Aspects come back, all come back in my talk now. In all the research on moral education and citizenship education, there's one variable that gives very good results, and that's what's called the open school climate. For example, in the ICCS study, international study on civic and citizenship education, there's always a strong relation between the open school climate and good citizenship, good results on citizenship education. An open school climate means that students are getting a voice, and they can articulate their ideas, that they can to a certain extent influence what's going on in the class. School. There are dialogues between the students and with the teachers, and that the learning process is inquiry-oriented. This open school climate is very important. Easily, Catherine D. Recently, there has been a book of the National Academy of Education in the United States, in which they summarize all the research on open classroom climate. Carol Lee has written the book, so I was thinking about the first name. The open school climate is very, very important. But not that easy to realize, as we all know. As I said, I distinguish between reflective learning, biological learning, and democratic learning. And reflective learning is articulated one's own interests, feelings, ethical and aesthetical concerns, meaning making, and moral values. It's articulating what you find important. But at the same time, inquiry, your ideas, your feelings, your interest, and try to regulate that learning process and taking responsibility for your own autonomy, your own giving meaning. So this is the reflective learning. And in particular, I want to emphasize the role of moral values in it. Because many people are speaking about reflection or critical thinking, and they present it as a kind of logical process, particularly in critical thinking literature. That you research different perspectives, that you look what the arguments are, and then you can have a logical conclusion. I think, and I'm not the only one, is that moral values often determine what kind of decision you made. It's not only logic, it's also what you prefer, what are your moral values. So therefore, I try to include moral values in definitions and practices of reflective learning or critical thinking. So that's the reflective learning. The second is the dialogical learning. And that's communicated in an open way with other people. It's about analysis and comparing different perspectives. And also analysis of social, cultural, and political power relations involved in that. So analyze the context and what processes are going on in the context. So dialogical learning is very important. And I refer here to the ideas of Martin Buber, French philosopher, or Paulo Freire, Brazilian pedagogue. So they really emphasize that dialogical learning means that people are open to change their mind. So when they are starting a dialogue, they are open to give up their own ideas, to change it. So that's important for an open dialogue. I added a certain kind of learning. That's a democratic learning. And in particular, I realized that after a study of one of my master's students in the Netherlands. In schools, it's very popular to play House of Parliament, the British Parliament. And then they have two groups discussing, but more fighting, shouting. And according to me, there is not enough emphasis in this kind of play in trying to find a consensus. So therefore, I speak about democratic learning. So the concern for others, appreciation of diversity, real open to other ideas. And then in particular, the second one, openness and jointly building agreements. That you're open to make agreements. Not only fighting, but also to find solutions, consensus. But still stand for your own autonomy and critical thinking and action. That's important to keep standing for that. You can change it, but it's not a free choice to be part of it. And the democratic learning, I hope to realize that there is an involvement in enlarging humanity and in building democracy as a permanent process. So that students, they have this kind of learning, experience more democracy than with only the fighting in the House of Parliament. So it's about bringing together, but also respecting minorities. If you haven't made a consensus, then open, or take also care of people who haven't won the parliamentary war. The democratic learning, I think, is very important. It should be added to reflective learning and dialogical learning. Two words about the teachers and teaching values. As I said, we have to take care of all the moral values in all subjects. See how they are part of it and how you can work with it. That means that teachers must have pedagogical goals, or what people nowadays also often call purpose. They must have an idea why they are teaching, why they choose for certain topics, for certain methods. They must have a vision. The pedagogical goals are important. Just was speaking about the learning process of the students, and emphasizing a lot that students are developing their own values. But it doesn't mean that the teacher doesn't have a role in that. I'm also not saying that teachers can be neutral. By definition, nobody can be neutral, real neutral. And therefore, I use the word value stimulation by teachers. In teaching, teachers always stimulate certain values. by the examples they are giving, how they respond to students. They show their values, even if they don't want it. So therefore, I use the concept of value stimulation, just to show the role of the teachers in it. What I've been saying till now, you wouldn't be surprised that I really emphasize using different perspectives in teaching. What the Dutch are saying about the colonial period, what the Indonesians are saying about the colonial period, that are different perspectives. We should try to study the both, to look at them both. So it's very important to use different perspectives. And not only about controversial issues. In particular, I want to emphasize also in the daily ideas about what kind of food people like, what kind of sport they like. So speak about these kind of topics with your students and try to use different perspectives in it. Ask them why you choose for that. What are you thinking about other sports, other food? So try to speak with them in a more dialogical way about it. It's important because when there are coming real controversial issues, students are trained already in speaking from different perspectives, in arguing, in trying to find consensus. So sometimes you see teachers that haven't that much experience in more dialogical and democratic learning processes. They start with controversial issues and it becomes very complicated. And realize also that teachers include and exclude. There's a normal social process. When you are working with people, you always include certain people more than others. Also can exclude people. So be aware of that. School culture is very important for moral development. In schools, students experience moral values. In the interpersonal relationships they have with other students, in their context with the teachers, in the school organization. And the school culture can be more democratic or less. And I'm not saying that in school students should decide everything, but we should look how we can give them more influence, how we can empower them, how we can schools more democratic. So it's good to look at the school culture, what kind of school culture you have, how you can change that. Part of school culture is the diversity. In many educational systems, in particular nowadays in Northwestern Europe, there is a growing social and cultural segregation between schools and within schools, between the different tracks. For example, in the Netherlands, we have 2/3 of the schools are religious schools. About half of them are Catholic, half of them Protestant. We also have a few Islamic schools and a few Jewish schools, but Christian schools are the most of them. And we have about 1/3 of the schools who are public schools. And there are two big differences between them. And the first one is that religious schools, the private schools, that they can select the students, and the public schools have to accept all. And selection is in practice not only on the religious, but also often on the intellectual capacities or the behavior the students show. So that's an important differences. And the second one is that all the schools are fully financed by the government, fully. Also what you maybe can call a kind of private schools, fully financed, and they all have to follow the national curriculum, except for the topic of religious studies. Religious studies, school can decide how they organize that and what they teach. But that is also, speaking about moral and citizenship, an important issue, because the organization of the Christian schools, the religious schools, particularly the religious Christian schools, they say often, when the government starts speaking about the curriculum, that they say, this is not a topic for the national curriculum, that is responsibility of the religious schools, because it relates to religious ideas. And for example, related to sexual education, related to evolutionary theory even. In some Protestant schools, strict Protestant schools, they don't want to teach evolution theory. But it also has to do with often with multicultural society. So for the Dutch government, it's difficult to make a good national curriculum. They only can do it on a quite abstract level, because the religious schools, and we have a law that's called freedom of education. The religious schools can determine a lot in the curriculum affairs. Some religious schools are very good, I don't mind that. But it makes it complicated for moral and citizenship education to have a good policy on that. So what I see here in Singapore, with the Ministry of Education, they do a lot. They do a lot of curriculum development. In the Netherlands, we have a National Institute of curriculum development that's independent of the government. Not really independent, but not part of the government formally. And they may make example material for the schools. Not material that schools have to follow, but just suggestions. So that issue of school culture and diversity is quite complex in the Netherlands. I really support public schools. I've done several research projects with them. And because of the idea that people from different cultural groups come together, they meet, that also the school has the idea we are working for the whole society. It's not to say that Christian schools are not doing that, but I think to a less extent than the public schools. So I really support the idea and the practice of public schools. The last part of school culture I want to mention, school culture and diversity, is the teacher is a kind of moral exemplar, the way he or she behaves, but also as a team. So I think it's not important to have only diversity on the level of the students, but also diversity on the level of the teachers. That you have different genders, that you have different teachers from different cultural, ethnic, and religious groups, different ages, so that the whole team is diverse. You're showing that as exemplar to the students. That's culture and diversity. Second part I want to speak about is about the pedagogical goals and different orientations in that. We've done a lot of research on that, both theoretical and empirical. And then we find always three different orientations. And the first one is focusing on adaptation, on discipline. It's a traditional way of character education. Adaptation and discipline is important. Be on time, behave well, listen to adult people, work hard. That kind of values or virtues, how you would like to call it. So that's the first trend, particularly articulated by Thomas Licona, but also already in 1923 by Emil Durkheim in the famous book on moral education. So that's the first trend we find always, the more traditional, we could say, way of adaptation. The second trend we find, it's more part of the modernization, autonomy, about critical thinking, and that has developed in particular by Piaget and Kohlberg, Larry Kohlberg from Harvard, who did a lot of research on moral development, in particular moral reasoning, so the cognitive development of people to think about moral values. And you hope that would be in particular the value of justice. We also find it in the work of British sociologist Anthony Giddens in his work on agency. That's the autonomy development. The second group of pedagogical goals. And the third one is the broad social spectrum. This is about care, articulated by Nell Noddings, empathy, social justice, more the thinking of Paulo Freire. So the social orientation can have different articulations, either more psychological like care and empathy, or more political like social justice. Combine these three orientations both in the literature and in many data we have. The further analysis this, and person-centered factor analysis, we could find three groups of people. The first one, we call that the adapted citizenship. And they emphasize discipline and a social orientation in their own community. A more communitarian approach. The second one is an individualized citizenship with a strong focus on autonomy, but with a weak social orientation. More focusing on the own development, the own ego. And the third one is a critical democratic citizenship that combines a focus on autonomy and on social concern. I try to balance autonomy and social concern. I'm very happy to see that this morning we had a meeting with one of the research groups here, and now they are making a survey, and they use this type of citizenship in a very creative and a nice way. So we had a great discussion about that, and it shows that I've been working with this scheme already for about 20 years, and it shows that people can make choices in what kind of citizenship they want. So you cannot say good citizenship. No, it depends on how you articulate that. And you can see that it can be done in different ways. One of my colleagues in the Netherlands once said, I like your types, but they look very similar to the three dominant political groups we had at that time. You can imagine So the first one more at that time called the Christian Democratic Party. The second one was more the Liberal Party. And the third one was the Social Democratic Party. Anyway, he was right. But we could show that clearly to teachers and school leaders. And we played a lot with it. So often we ask in the research, what do you find important? And what do you practice? And then you get a difference. For example, we had a representative study about teachers in the Netherlands. And about half of them, we could say that they are oriented to critical democratic citizenship in their goals, their ideas. But when we ask them, what are you doing in practice? Say, we do a lot, not adaptation. We want our teachers to be quiet and to work hard. And so we are doing a lot on that. We're doing a lot on individualized citizenship by our strong focus on selection and assessment and on our personal care. And we want to do a lot of critical democratic citizenship, but that's so difficult. Because here we try to relate the different types of citizenship to different educational practices. And adapted, these are, of course, stereotypes. In practice, you have more a mix. It's good to, from an analytical point, is helpful. Adapted, Joang has to take care of my position that I'm still in front of the camera. So the adapted educational practice, that's more oriented to fixed values, transmission of values, the focus on norms in schools. This teacher directed, and that's strongly in education, particularly more traditional education. Individualized educational citizenship is more focusing on autonomy and see values as personal choice. They don't think that they are really working on moral education. They think they are more working in a technical way. This is teaching in a technical way. And they focus a lot on independent learning by yourself. But this individualized citizenship education is very strongly in the hidden curriculum, with focusing on assessment, on selection. And the third, critical democratic, I said already that the teachers are mentioned that this is so difficult. There's a combining of autonomy and social concern. It's about joint deliberation of values, more cooperative and inquiry-oriented teaching and learning. And this is difficult to realize, as we all know, and many teachers want this kind of education more, but it's not that easy to realize that. One of my student teachers once said, "Oh, Wiel, I really like your ideas, and I want to work on critical democratic education. I'm happy if the students are a little bit silent and a little bit working hard, so that I can, as beginning teacher, to start working and start learning the way of teaching." So I understand that. So different educational practice are possible when you're speaking about citizenship education. And it's good to have some ideas where you want to go. A few more words about democracy. Also about democracy, people can have different ideas. I like the expression, of John Dewey is democracy as a way of life. It's not only a formal system for him, but also in daily life. You have to be open to other people. You have to try to make consensus, and you have to respect minorities. So it's a way of life, according to John Dewey. I like that idea. But elements of democracy are freedom of speech, autonomy. That's a very important part of democracy. Participation is important, engagement, being part of the political world. Deliberation, dialogue, coming to a consensus, this is important. And the first three, that's what people sometimes call the soft democracy, or light democracy. And democracy can go some steps further. For example, including diversity. That can be part of the ideas of democracy. You can say that always democracy needs a kind of inclusiveness, but democracy can focus also more on that, making it very explicit that people that they try to include different social and cultural groups. And what I understand, that's also quite important here in Singapore, that inclusion part. One step further is that democracy is also a kind of social justice. That democracy is not only about participation and dialogues and so, but also want to realize the participation of everybody. Give everybody equal chances. So it's more about equity, social justice, and this kind of democracy, a social justice democracy, as some people are saying, you don't see it that much. You see it a little bit in the Scandinavian countries. You saw it a little bit in the Netherlands, but now with the right-wing policy, less. So social justice, we also should think about that as part of democracy. Now a few words about international developments and going to the more the globalization part. I like this book by Joel Spring. It titled How Educational Ideologies Are Shaping Global Society. We published in 2004, and he distinguished 4 ideologies that are important for education. And each country made a mix of that. And the first ideology is a nationalist ideology. It's about the own country, the own nation building. And it's a little bit like what you are having here in Singapore, the nationalist education. Eh? It's called national education, you call it. Eh? So it's about creating the nation together and educate people to be part of the nation. Focusing on mother tongue language. For example, in Indonesia, that's very important, that all people speaking the same language. It's also about the history of the nation. What is the history of it? What people know where we come from. Spring is saying, to some extent, each country, and in particular young countries, young nations, need a kind of nationalist education. But that shouldn't be that strong, because then it becomes nationalistic education. The second ideology is schooling for a global free market. The first one is emphasizing in particular by the own government, the nationalist approach. The second one, schooling for a global free market, is emphasized a lot about organizations, EMF, the World Bank, the OECD, and that it's trying to enlarge the competitiveness of a nation, the economic competitiveness, the good results in PISA, and I know Singapore is doing very well in the international studies like that. So it's about technology. So real focusing on the market, on be part of the world, try to be one of the leaders in the world economy. That's the second influence on a curriculum of a nation. And the third one, he called globalizing morality. That's more about human rights, democracy. That's more the moral aspect of education. And that's emphasized by organizations like UNESCO and by NGOs. And the fourth one, more recently he developed that, is about environmental ideologies. And again, the NGOs are important. So these four ideologies, they come together in a nation and they make it, each nation make a combination of that. I found that helpful, these differences. And I refer there to Ivor Goodson. He's using the term reflection, and each nation are making a reflection of the different ideologies, so included in their own thinking. Like I did with the national citizenship, I also tried to develop different types of global citizenship. Studied the literature, and I found three different types of global citizenship. The first one is an open global citizenship, and that is a neoliberal market ideology of openness. That you're open to the world in different ways. You're open to other cultures, open to market, business, open, quite neutral, open way to the world. The second one is a moral global citizenship, articulated in particular by Martha Nussbaum, Appia, Sen, thinkers like that. It's about appreciating diversity, enhancing humanity, and taking care of the world. It's a moral call for a better world. That's another way of thinking about citizenship education, more global citizenship education. But also, it's called cosmopolitan approach. Some people, like for example, Chantal Mouffe, Belgian philosopher working in England, and but also already in the work of Paulo Freire, but also more critical global scientists like Carlos Alberto Torres, Vanessa Andreotti. So they are criticizing a more global citizenship. They're saying it's not political enough. Also should challenge the power relations, ask for social justice. They try to make more global citizenship more political. We recently had the debate in the Journal of Moral Education with David Hansen about the difference between the moral and the political. And David was saying, right, the moral is more defined an ideal situation. The social political is more about the struggle we need to have to realize that ideal situation. So we need both. So the ideal world, but also how we can arrive at that point, maybe sometime. So again, three types of citizenship here now in a global perspective. And I interviewed teachers in the Netherlands about these ideas. And teachers find an open and a moral global citizenship important. Teachers are aware of the fact that values are always embedded in social and political relations. And teachers are reluctant to focus explicitly on political values, and in particular on more transformative ideas. Teachers in the Netherlands are a little bit afraid of speaking about politics. And I really was thinking about how, when writing about this research and publishing the article, I really was thinking, how should I think about that? How should I judge that? And the more I was thinking about it, the more I understand the teachers. Because it was not their own idea. In the Dutch educational system, it's not emphasized so much that you pay a lot of attention to real politics. So I can understand that teachers were individually afraid about speaking so much about that. So they only want to speak in more general terms about it, not to be real political and not real speaking about power relations. But so I came to my position that teachers should show that there's a social, political, global perspective as one of the perspectives. You don't need to say that this, how they think about that. Of course, they show it a little bit, but they should pay it to attention as one of the possibilities. I also did small research with students of my university, students in the area of moral citizenship, students my university, about 70 students in Yogyakarta State University in the citizenship program. And I asked them how important you find these goals of global citizenship. So I made some items relating to the concept. So the openness, I find it important to gain knowledge about different cultures. I'm open to new cultural experiences. I want to meet people from different parts of the world. And the second, the moral is, I feel responsible for our global world and for humanity. I want to work on enlarging the opportunities of all human beings. I appreciate cultural differences between people. And the third one, the social-political level, and based on particular on Paulo Freire, see this picture. I'm aware of social and political power relations in the global world. I want to strive for more equal social and political power in the global world. And I support the struggle of underprivileged people to gain more power. So the third one was the more social-political way of thinking about global citizenship. Interesting was what my research showed. There were not really differences on the open global citizenship, also not on the moral, but there were quite differences between the Dutch group and the Indonesian group on the social-political. And the Indonesians, they were more social-political than the Dutch. Dutch were more general open, more general moral, but the Indonesians, they were more social-political engaged. First, I was surprised by that, but when I was thinking about it more, I could understand that. It's interesting to see that it depends how you define global citizenship education, who is the best global citizen. And normally you would think all those Western people who travel around a lot, speak several languages and hang around everywhere, and they are very global. But if you introduce a social-political aspect of global citizenship, then they are less global than people from the global south, in this case. So it's interesting to find these kind of results. Okay, I'm speaking already for 1 hour. I'd like to move on a little bit faster. I did 2 studies in Europe, of the European Parliament, about the implementation of citizenship education and moral values, particularly focusing on democracy, social cohesion. And It's nice to do it for the European Parliament, because then you can be more critical than when you are doing that for the European Commission. They want to have more support for their policy in the Parliament. They want to have ideas how to improve the policy. So, some conclusions. Nowadays, culture and nature get more attention than social class and power relations. Many countries. There's often a limited idea about democracy. I show those elements, and social justice is often not included. It's often an inward looking in national citizenship history. So in the Netherlands, we have many debates about how we should think about the colonial period. And what should we teach about that? Global citizenship, when it is, it's strongly neoliberal. Like Carlos Alberto Torres is saying, you can either have competition or solidarity. It's more about competition than about solidarity. Also, it's not so much the policy, but the research shows that there is a lot of inequality in global citizenship development and global citizenship practices. The elite benefits often of globalization, and the lower class are often suffering from globalization. So you cannot say that globalization is good as a good development for all people. Inequality is growing even. Of course, globalization has done good things in many countries, but we should also look at inequality. And recently, the focusing is less global, but more sustainable. And what we found in many countries, that there is a gap in policy. With that, I mean that there is not only a gap between the policy and the practice, but also within policy. But on a very high level, they have a nice idea, and they find citizenship and moral education quite important. When they come to concrete measures, to concrete material, then a lot of countries are not that active. And what I know from international developments, I think Singapore does quite well in that they have. I've seen a syllabus that the ministry developed for the schools. So that's more coherent approach than what we see in many countries, including the Netherlands. Very nice idea and a lot of initiatives, but not so much bringing together. And the government policy that was striking. Some developments in theory of moral and citizenship education. Very quickly, the relation of autonomy and social concern. How these should be together. So with Jasmin Sim have speaking a lot that about that the East should become more autonomous and the West should become more social. And so where East can meet West, the role of emotions is recently becoming stronger. In particular, to all kind of events in society, people have strong emotions. What they like, but also what kind of fear they are having. So we should pay attention to that. It's not only rationality that's part of moral education, also the emotions. Different orientation perspectives, speaking already a lot about it. Recently, there are published books and articles about non-Western perspective in the global South. But already before, many researchers in Asia that they're working on character education and moral education and citizenship education. Diversity is a real issue controversial issues, different concepts of democracy, biological learning, service learning, how in many countries, I don't know, also here in Singapore, a project about service learning. Student voice, give students more a voice in schools, and community involvement. How the school can really work together with the community. Dus in the Netherlands. Yeah. In the Netherlands, speaking about good examples in the Netherlands, there are particular certain projects. For example, we have mock elections, and that means that students are voting for the parliament, and like the adults are doing, and they do it the same day as the formal elections are. And many schools are doing that. And before, they often have lessons about the different ideas of the parties. So yeah, they learn how they put it in the table. So to vote. And often they are quite similar to the adults, what they are. So also now, the last 3 elections, the youngsters were voting a lot for the extreme right parties. That's not the best thing. The primary schools, they also often do those kind of elections. And then the party of the animals is the biggest one. That's nice. So a lot of mock elections, you call it mock elections. Anti-bullying projects we have. A lot of projects about multicultural society. Service learning a lot. Community work, charity activities. My concerns, my concerns. Some strong segregation in the Netherlands, but also more northwestern countries, and a growing segregation. The strong individualism and the weakness of the social. So the balance between that can be better. The weak involvement in civic society of subgroups. Very paradoxical thing is that now we have about 1/3 of the votes are for the 2 extreme right parties. That's a lot. But one good thing of that is that now many more people trust policy. The paradox, because before, those people who had extreme ideas, they were not voting. And I'm not saying that all the voters of the extreme right parties, they were non-voters before, but quite a lot of them. So now they are part of the political system. That's the paradoxical good thing of it. But so there's now more involvement in political participation. It's the paradox, but not in democratic participation. The acceptance of immigrants, you probably all know, is going down in many European countries, the Netherlands also. Social media and fake news. The teaching of controversial issues. Well, it's not that easy. It is necessary, but not that easy. And the balance in the curriculum between the basics and citizenship education. And the balancing in policy between steering and control. But to end, a more positive view for where we have to go. A critical whole school approach. It's teaching and learning of values. And the specific subject citizenship education, or maybe even better, moral and citizenship education, or character and citizenship education. Integration in other subjects and curricular activities. A dialogical, cooperative and inquiry methodology of teaching and learning. Not always, but a lot of that. A democratic school culture with active participation of students. Inclusive education, bringing together different groups of students and teachers. In collaboration with the wider community. Speaking about the wider community. So in American publications, they always really like the community. But then often they mean their own community. But my idea is that students know already their own community, but they should learn about other communities. So therefore, go to other communities as part of school activities. But what educational professionals can do in educational policy, and policy in what sense, be aware of tensions, promote dialogue and consensus, include different groups, what's top down and bottom up, what you and your colleagues want to do in your school, and what's the official policy. Show perspectives, try to make education more just, equal, and democratic. More pedagogical strategy, showing different perspectives, and focus also on the values embedded in social and political power relations, without taking a strong political stance. Stimulate openness, dialogue, and value diversity. And care about the world, humanity, and democracy. Showing own values as teacher, I hope social justice. And to end, students should be challenged to learn more reflectively, dialogical, and democratically, and to develop their identity, citizenship, hopefully a democratic citizenship. And we all, citizens and scholars, should appreciate more the moral work of teachers. They can play a crucial role in making society more democratic, just, inclusive, and sustainable. I think it's very important that policy and scholars are really supporting teachers in this, and that they emphasizing that their pedagogical role is so important. So when I had discussions with teachers about this, then the teachers say, yeah, but we have so much to do, so many activities, and the government is again asking new activities. And I'm saying to them, be happy that the government really supports, that really likes you to do this work. We wouldn't think about an education in which the government is saying, leave all that moral value stuff, only focusing on the basics, and the moral and character education we leave open to the army, the police, and other kind of socialization agents, and forget that education can also be a very strong socialization actor. So we should support teachers and help them. And technology can help, but moral values keep important. Maybe become even more important because of complexity and impact of technology on personal life and life itself. This is an open access book I added of the European project of 8 universities, in which we develop modules, students that travel around to the different universities. It's open access, you can download. And this is my new book. Many of the ideas I was speaking about, you find in a more elaborated way there. And an extended review of it, you can read in the Journal of Moral Education. And this is my book in Bahasa Indonesia. So they translated 7 Dr. Samsuri from Yogyakarta State University. He translated 7 articles of me from English into Bahasa. And he wrote a chapter about Indonesia and introduced my articles. So this is now published in Indonesia. I'm very happy with that. So thank you. 1 hour and 20 minutes. So we have time for Q&A yet?
Thank you, Wiel. And I really like the way that Wiel has put together moral education together with citizenship, because here in Singapore, we believe that character development and citizenship education should go hand in hand. You have also given us a lot today to think about in the teaching and the learning process. And there are a few things that actually stood out to me. First is to think about not just pedagogical practices and strategies that we use in our lesson, but what is the pedagogical goals that we hope to achieve? What do we want our students to be able to do after our lesson, and not just think about the activities and how we engage them during lesson. And in this, actually, there's another thing that he spoke about our goals that's important to balance autonomy and social orientation. This is something that we have discussed with him quite extensively in the last 1 week as well. How do we develop in our students the ability to think critically, make informed decisions, at the same time develop the empathy as well as the commitment for the common good, our shared values and our shared identity that we have here. You have also highlighted beyond the learning and teaching process for us to think about the hidden curriculum, which is culture. Culture is important because you have highlighted to us, don't just do it in the lesson when you discuss challenging issues. Do it in your day-to-day living when you discuss about food you like, sports you like and don't like, because this has to be lived and experienced by our students, not just in the lesson, but in a congruent way in the way they interact with one another in class. So I believe there's a lot of questions that you may have for Prof. Veugelers, and I would like to invite you to share your comments as well as your question with us. Do introduce yourself when you ask a question. So may I invite our participants both online and in person to ask our first question? Anyone, please? Suzanne, thank you.
Hi, Prof. Veugelers. Thank you so much. It was very, very interesting. I especially like the idea of the 3 citizenship, the adapted, the social democratic, critical democratic, and individualized. Maybe I can add a 4th one. The 4th one I think is called negotiated citizenship, because in actual fact I think that it's not one type of citizenship, that I think our students need to know how to negotiate all 3. That means sometimes they need to be critical, and then sometimes they need to be individualistic, and then sometimes they need to be adaptable. So I feel that they need to know how to negotiate all 3. I need to know when to be critical, when to be individualistic, when to be communitarian. And I'm just wondering whether you have any advice on how to teach kids the kind of discernment to know when to adopt which type of citizenship in which type of situation.
Yeah, thank you, Susanna. That's a good point. So yeah, as I was stretching already, but I did in particular with the practice, so that these are stereotypes or ideal situations, and that in practice they all go together. But what you mentioned strongly was you have to learn students when they have to use either this or that and how they combine it. That's a good point. Yeah. I don't think it's a 4th one, but it's more you learn them to work with the 3. So yeah.
And not to fix yourself in one.
Yeah.
Right? But because I think in the virtue ethics, they have this word phronesis, practical wisdom.
Yeah.
So practical wisdom is very important in citizenship, because you need to know when to enact what kind of citizenship in what circumstances.
Yeah.
And the other thing a question I have is that in Singapore, we have actually encouraged the discussion of contentious issues. But one thing that I did a survey with teachers before, and one thing they often bring up is that they are very afraid to discuss issues that are very close to identity, things like gender, race, and religion. That's why I think, similar to your survey, nature, sustainability, climate change is easier. But anything to identity is they don't know how to they're afraid that students will be triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know whether you have advice on how do you engage students, especially in emotional identity type of topics like gender or like race.
Yeah.
What are the ways to do this?
Yeah, that was a good point. And in a way, it's surprisingly that in this period, governments are try to influence so much the identity development of people. Because in the neoliberal societies we have, the government wants to be small, not intervene too much in society. But regarding character and citizenship education, they have very strong ideas about how to influence the personal life of people. And that is all, the Netherlands, there's often a discussion between the government and the religious organizations. And in particular in what your syllabus is called sexual education and family education, but also multicultural education. So it really touches the personal life of people. Yeah, often you can better learn students think with topics that are a little bit farther away. So often I said to my teachers, to my students, that you're speaking easily, that you have to work with the experiences of the students. But often it's too complex to work with the experience of the students. Therefore, when you want to speak about violence in the street, the gangs and many youngsters in big cities, not so much I think in Singapore, but God hopes, there is violence among youngsters. So discussing that, you cannot say, who of you has been hit by some gangsters, some young gangsters? Who of you has been hit? Come on, tell me. You cannot do that. So it's very difficult to speak about this kind of topics. And then often you can better speak about it about far away than to make it too personal immediately. People have strong negative experiences with either topics like fighting, but also about discrimination. So you cannot speak so easily about it. Teachers should be aware of that and not be naive. And some teachers are saying then you also should give the students a chance to withdraw from the discussion. Yeah, but even the step of withdrawing is already, give some idea. It would be good if all the students withdraw. Then nobody wants to speak about it. But to not stereotype again the few people who wanted to withdraw. So good point. Thank you. Yeah.
Anyone has any other questions?
Yeah.
Thank you for I really appreciate how you pointed out empowerment and development of identity within the student. Just want to because like you mentioned and she mentioned, it's difficult to approach topics that are a bit more sensitive.
Yeah.
And especially identity related topics. And hence students, there's a high chance of students taking this online because it can be anonymous.
Yeah.
I just want to ask, what's the role
educational technology or technology in this whole discussion of moral education and character development? What's the role of technology?
I'm not on social media, so I'm not a big expert on that. But I think technology is not so much new. It gives us more possibilities to communicate. It gives us more possibility, to communicate with people far away that we don't know. But does technology create other ways of communicating? I'm not sure about that. So we had the discussions about the 21st century skills. But if you were looking at them, I was sometimes joking, saying that the old Greeks philosophers, they had already all these skills. In a way, they pronounce only not technology because they're not having computers. But I don't know. I think we shouldn't emphasize too much the changes of technology. It's very helpful technology, but fake ideas, you could find them already before on the street, and people. But now they can communicate that easier. But it's not real new. And the use of logarithm. Before you did it yourself, and you were also looking in your own bubble often. So we should think about it and be aware of it, but don't give us the idea that everything has changed. So like in the beginning of technology, it was suggested to us that everybody comes in an open world. Yeah, but now we only partly regulated not by our own governments, but by the big tech companies. So we should use them, and don't give us the idea that it's real different. And so often people are saying, yeah, we don't know what the kids are doing on the internet. But before, the parents also didn't know everything what the kids were doing. So it's important to look at the processes and how they change. Thank you.
I have a question. I'm interested to know how history education, citizenship education, how can we sort of bring it together, in some semblance, to promote the whole idea of attitude, more of a focus on not nationalist, but really being a good citizen. Any thoughts that you have?
History is very important for developing of citizenship education, and as I said before, there are often debates about what should be part of citizenship education. And for example, as I said already, we are having a lot of discussion about how we should speak about the colonial era of the Netherlands, and we want to abandon the word. The 16th century has been called golden century in the Netherlands, but we want to skip the word golden, because the golden was only that we stole. So we are celebrating that period, because that was important for Dutch culture.
Yes.
And the development. The Netherlands is a very powerful.
Every time, the Dutch EIC was very powerful.
VOC, It was a very powerful nation, and but also there were not aspects that were not that nice, and so therefore many people are speaking about leaving, don't speak anymore about the golden century, just speak about the 16th century, not golden.
Thank you.
One of the most recent debates is the leader of the biggest extreme right party. Was saying that shows real the kind of idea they're having. A few years ago, the Dutch king and the Dutch president, but the prime minister, they have given excuse to Indonesia for the bad things we have done during the colonial period. Now, the leader of the extreme right party is saying we should take him back the excuse and ask Indonesia to make excuse for their independent war. So that's the kind of discussions in the extreme right world are going on. And they try to influence the curriculum in that way too.
So I'm interested to know, you were talking about earlier, also how a lot of young people also gravitate towards this right-wing parties. Is there any reason for this? I mean, despite all this education about global, yet that kind of thinking is still there. How does that, I don't know. I'm thinking, why is this?
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
No, there's a lot more young people also very much into the right.
Yeah.
Why is that?
What is that? Say for because of uncertainty. Also, and that's more for the lower class children, that many Dutch companies have outsources the low skill work to Bangladesh, Indonesia, Vietnam. And so those people lost their job or are afraid of losing their job. And also the wages of the low incomes, they have often going down. Because we could get cheaper labor from Eastern Europe. And they're working in the building area. People, so it's the connection of uncertainty, the way of losing jobs, and also that the people from non-Western cultures, they are not living in the elite areas. They are concentrating in the lower social class areas. So people also lost kind of community feeling. So these things are together are influencing it.
I have two questions from our online participants. So may I invite Elaine to unmute yourself to ask the question? Elaine, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hi, Prof. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah.
Thank you, Prof, for your sharing. I have two questions. One, I recognize critical democratic practice is a preferred choice, but difficult to realize. How can we create an environment to encourage this practice or scaffold this practice? Make this not just whole of school, but also a whole of society approach. That's my first question. My second question, I like Ferry's work too, especially critical dialogue, critical consciousness. However, dialogic practice requires a lot of time to facilitate in the classroom. So in a hurried environment where teachers are always rushing to complete curriculum syllabus, how can these dialogues be facilitated without being a touch and go tokenistic effort? Does a reduction of curriculum content help? Where we focus more on dialogue, dialogue on students' lived experiences. Thank you.
Good question. So the first one, yeah, as I showed it, it's not that easy to realize. And I like your point that we should think about the whole of society approach. And want to paraphrase Paulo Freire. He's saying that the pedagogical should become more political, and the political should be more pedagogical. And I'm saying that the moral should become more political, and the political should become more moral. So both are needed, and it's real responsibility of society. So therefore, also the community approach is so important. But it's not that easy. But it's important that we show that this is an alternative in thinking about education. And yeah, of course, the government should really emphasize the importance of citizenship education by giving good facilities, give good hours in the curriculum, and taking seriously that they want to pay attention, they want to have attention for it. Yeah, and reducing the curriculum content, yeah, that's, I think, necessary here. To give it a serious place in the curriculum. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you, Prof.
But the wishing is so terrible for the teachers. It's really a hard job.
But I like what you said earlier about the focus.
Okay.
I think it's very important to have a purpose, right, in your curriculum. What do you want to achieve within that?
Yeah.
And then have that conversation.
And as I was speaking about changes in time, for a while, we present, also we, as teacher educators, presented the teacher profession as a kind of technological approach. Making good lesson plans and use the media and the ICT well, a technical approach. And then it became the era of reflection, but that was quite vague. And now many people all around the world in teacher education, they speak about purpose and focusing on helping students to develop a pedagogical vision. So pedagogy is again real in the picture.
Yeah, at this point, I will select one of the questions that was raised by our participants when you first registered for the seminar. So one of our participants asked, from today's seminar that you have shared, if you were to choose one important enablers and one important barriers that you want to address so that we can better carry out critical democratic citizenship education in school, then what would it be? So one important enabler and one important barriers. Yeah, thank you.
The enablers. So as I was saying, discuss with teachers about their pedagogical vision. Let them read the text, but also let them think about. And I really have liked during my academic career was making networks of schools. That schools are working together and talk about their practice. And in Amsterdam, I started in 1988, a network, and that network is still going on. I left 5 years ago then because I retired, but it's still going on. And each month they have a meeting, and mostly the vice principal is there, what you call the educational leader, principal leader. They are meeting from different schools and they speak about their practice. And sometimes they invite people from outside to give a lecture to talk about their practice. And they just speak about the normal things. Also often they speak, for example, are students allowed to have the mobile phone in the classroom? And so you start often to speak about with such practical things, but then in particular, I try to do that to look what kind of vision is behind it, and and the people from the schools, they really like to talk with people from other schools. Then they experience that often they have the same problems, or they see what's very special for their school. And also, and that's very important, they feel a member of a larger educational community than only their own school. So bringing people together, and in the Netherlands, because of the religious system, you have quite a lot of different schools who are competing with each other about the students and also about the teachers. And it's good that they also have some kind of cooperation. So bringing people from different schools together is so important. Also creating in the schools people, a lot of cooperation between the students, between the teachers.
Thank you. Since Wiel has also spoken about bringing a community together, I will take this chance to do an advertisement. In fact, in SCCCE, we are hoping to build a network of colleagues and schools who are interested to have this dialogue, and we call them our partner schools. So it's not for you to share your best practice, but to really bring some of the things that we are doing and we want feedback for ourselves, or to discuss the common issues that we have together as well. So I have time for one more question. Would anyone like to ask a last question? Then with this, I would like to thank Prof. Veugelers for a wonderful afternoon. A good discussion and learning together. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Have a good evening ahead.